Hello everyone, it's me Jenny and welcome to my Friday vlog series, Jenny Likes Children's Books, and today I'm going to be talking about the literary classic and children's favourite, Heidi. Heidi is, there is multiple editions of it. It's a classic story, it's been made several times. I just looked up the date in this particular edition and it was first published in 1959, so this particular edition is probably 50, maybe even 60 years old, or maybe slightly younger, but it's hard to tell exactly. It's a pretty good edition, obviously hardback, and it's pretty good. It comes with a reasonable amount of pencil style pictures throughout, and a couple of big scale pretty pictures, and what's interesting about this is this isn't my first edition of Heidi. In fact, I got this one much later than the Ladybird book copy that I had when I was actually little, which came with a read-along tape, and that one I listened to a lot and I read that version a lot, and it's very interesting in terms of, I've talked about separating fictional universes before, because they are very much the same story, but as the other one was published in the 90s and this one was published in the 50s, 60s, the focus of the story is very different from this book to the other book. The Ladybug book focused a lot more on the relationship between Heidi and her friend Clara, and there was a lot of time spent in Frankfurt with Heidi becoming more and more homesick and getting the kittens and doing a lot of the fun stuff with Clara, and the Doctor character was a very, very minor character. He was just a passing character, while in this edition there is a lot more time spent with Clara and her grandfather. There's a lot more time spent with Clara and the vicar. There is a lot more time spent with Clara and the Doctor. And the Doctor is, in fact, probably one of the most important characters in this particular edition. And it's not that he's not featured in the other version, it's just the focus is very much strongly on his character. He's, you know, by the end he's like another grandfather, he's another Alma uncle to Heidi, and I found that really interesting. And I realise I've been talking about this book out of context. If you don't know what the story is about, it's about a young girl who moves to the mountains because she's an orphan to live with her grandfather, who's the Arm uncle. And there's some very interesting things in this, also with an adult context. The fact that a lot of the overarching themes of this are elation with nature, like she sleeps at night, and one of the key visual things that I've always remembered since I was little was that she sleeps at night in the barn on the mountain and she listens to the sound of the wind in the pines, and it's very romanticised, it's very beautiful. She always feels snug and warm in her little hay bed, and she, you know, every day has goat's cheese and fresh made bread and goat's milk, and that's the perfect, you know, brings her to the pinnacle of health, simple living, and it's a very idealised version of peasant living. But having read this as an adult, you realise that there's a lot of stuff that's gone on with the Arm uncle that isn't really talked about. There's some stuff about his children, and there was some sort of scandal. It's never really truly specified how serious it got, but basically, you know, she has a grandfather who she's never met, who is kind of segregated from the family, and despite having, you find out in the winter months, he can move down to this relatively grand house. It's a house which has separate sections and multiple bedrooms and a big fireplace, and he's a carpenter, he's a skilled person, and he's moved up to live in a pauper's cottage on the mountain. And so it's a very interesting thing. It's almost like it's a version of idealised peasantry, but he's not actually a peasant, he's actually a pretty well-off gentleman, and he's kind of moved into almost summer home as his reclusive state post all of the scandal that happened, and his you know, during the course of this book. This again focuses a lot more on the religious aspects of the story than the 90s version, but you know, he's lost his faith and he rediscovers his faith through this little girl who, you know, latches on to the concept and really feeds it into the community again, and it's a very interesting thing to read with an adult context where you're really aware of like the sort of struggle of the, you know, for a book that's so there for the sake of idealised peasantry. Actually, when you find out more about the Arm uncle, he's a fascinating character who has become agnostic, he's become faithless, and he's for that, become completely secluded from his community because of some of the stuff which happened with his children. And yet through his grandchild comes back into the community and becomes a better, healthier, happier person and starts helping others again, rather than just becoming a recluse. It's really very interesting. Again, same thing with the doctor who suffers from possibly some sort of level of depression, who again finds some sort of level of peace and tranquility on the mountains with Heidi and with her grandfather, and with this idealised beauty of the mountains and this idealised sense of peasantry. And I've talked for way too long, but basically to conclude, this is into the To Keep to Pile. I think I did actually get a lot more out of this book reading it as an adult in comparison to as a child, and it is one of the few books that the title instantly gets a song looping in my head, which is the Heidi song. I don't know how many people know it, whether or not it's just me, but it's me. Heidi, Heidi, dee dee, Heidi, Heidi, Heidu, Heidi, 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 dee dee, Heidi, Heidi, Heidu, Heidi, Heidi, dee dee, Heidi, Heidi, Heidu. And it goes round and round in a loop like that, and yeah, if I wasn't blushing already, I certainly am now. Anyway, thank you all for watching. I'm sorry I rambled on quite so long, but thank you all for watching. Feel free to comment, like, and all those things if you liked it. If you didn't like it, feel free to leave a dislike. I'm sorry I rambled on, and I will see you guys all very soon for another vlog of some kind, because I do that on the daily. Yeah, bye guys.